My mother texted me at 8:43 that night. "You're just jealous and broke. Don't ruin my evening again." No call, no explanation. Just a sentence sharp enough to slice through everything that used to hold us together. I read it twice, then set the phone down beside the stack of bills I'd paid for her that month, electric, water, mortgage, all in my name. That was the moment something inside me finally went still. 3 days later, when the restaurant lights dimmed and her credit cards failed one by one, I didn't pick up the phone. That silence, it was mine this time. I'm Ava Collins, and if you asked anyone in my family, they'd tell you I'm the responsible one. The one who remembers due dates, keeps receipts, and makes sure the lights stay on. It sounds good when you say it out loud, responsible. But somewhere along the line, responsible turned into useful, and useful turned into invisible. Growing up, my mom liked things to look perfect. Matching outfits for family photos, a clean table for Sunday dinners, and smiles that lasted just long enough for the camera flash. My little sister Chloe was the centerpiece of it all. Blonde, loud, and full of charm. Everyone loved her, especially Mom. I used to think it didn't bother me that we were just different. But even as a kid, I noticed how Mom's tone softened when she spoke to Chloe, how she called her my sunshine, and how with me she switched to, "Can you handle this for me?" By the time I was old enough to get a job handle, this meant paying for things no one talked about. Groceries that just got missed, the internet bill that slipped through the cracks, Dad's medication when insurance fell short. At first I didn't mind. I told myself it was family. Family helps family. But after a while, helping turned into habit, and habit turned into expectation. When I got my first real accounting job, Mom didn't ask how work was. She asked if I could add her to my phone plan. "Just until I figure out mine," she said. That was 4 years ago. The bill still comes to me. Then came the car insurance, the water bill, even the house payment when Dad's hours got cut. Mom said it was temporary. "You're good with money, Ava. You know how to juggle things." Every month I juggled a little more and they handed me another ball. It reached a point where my paycheck didn't feel like mine anymore. I'd get paid on Friday, and by Sunday half of it was gone auto drafts for accounts with their names on them, but my card underneath. Mom liked to brag to people about how independent we all were. She'd post family pictures and captions like, "Proud of my hard-working girls." Meanwhile, Chloe hadn't held a job in 2 years. Every time she posted a photo from some rooftop brunch, I could spot the credit card in her handmine. The thing is, I don't think they saw what they were doing. I really don't. They'd gotten so used to me fixing everything that it stopped registering as help. It was just the way things worked. Mom asked, I paid. Chloe spent, I adjusted. Dad stayed quiet. But lately, something in me had started to shift. Maybe it was turning 29 and realizing how much of my 20s I'd spent covering for other people. Maybe it was how empty my apartment felt at the end of every month knowing I could balance everyone's life, but not live my own. The night before Mom sent that text, I'd caught her on the phone with Aunt Diane. She laughed and said Chloe's doing so well. Ava's fine. She's always fine. I stood in the doorway unseen, holding the folder with their unpaid cable bill. That line stayed with me. She's always fine. It wasn't praise, it was dismissal, the kind that sounds harmless until you've heard it too many times. So when her message came the next night calling me jealous and broke it, didn't sting like before. It just confirmed what I already knew. In her eyes, I wasn't a daughter. I was the system keeping her world running until the day I decided to shut it down. It happened the week of Mom's birthday. She'd picked the restaurant herself, some upscale place with linen napkins and dim lighting that made everyone look a little richer. She sent the family group text a few days before dinner at 7. Dress nice. I showed up on time, of course. I always did. Dad waved when he saw me walk in, but it was the kind of wave you give a coworker, not your kid. Chloe was already there wearing a gold dress that probably cost more than my rent. She leaned in to kiss Mom's cheek, laughing at something before I even sat down. "Look who made it," Mom said when I reached the table. "Ava, I wasn't sure you'd be able to pull yourself away from work." I smiled politely. I left on time. The waiter brought menus. Mom didn't look at hers. She'd already decided what everyone would eat. She always did. The wine came next, and the small talk started. Vacations, Chloe's new boyfriend, a neighbor's renovation. the usual performance. Then the bill arrived. That's when it always got awkward. The waiter placed the black folder neatly at the edge of the table. No one reached for it right away. Mom glanced at me, then at Chloe. So she said, swirling her wine, "Who's covering this year?" There was a pause, the kind that makes your stomach tighten. I said quietly, "I can if you need me to, but maybe someone else can take it this time." The table went still. Chloe laughed sharp and loud. You can barely afford that salad you ordered." Mom chuckled, not even looking up. "Not you, honey, you're broke." It landed like a slap. The waiter was still standing there. A couple at the next table turned their heads. My face burned, but I stayed quiet. Chloe leaned forward, smiling the way people do when they know they've drawn blood. "Don't be so serious, Ava. You're always jealous when things aren't about you." Dad cleared his throat, but Mom was still talking, telling the waiter to put it all on the usual card. My card, the one tied to their account. I watched him swipe it, knowing the charge would hit my phone within minutes. No one said thank you. They just went back to talking, and I realized this was never going to stop. Not because they couldn't help it, but because they didn't have to. When dinner ended, Mom hugged Chloe first, then turned to me. "Don't make a big deal out of money," she said softly, as if I were the one who had caused a scene. I nodded, though my hands were shaking. "Sure, Mom. Whatever you say." On the way home, I stopped at a gas station. The fluorescent lights were harsh, buzzing overhead. I bought a bottle of water and stood by my car trying to breathe. My phone vibrated a text from Mom. "Don't ruin my night again. You're just jealous and broke. No period at the end. Just that." I stared at the words for a long time, watching the screen dim and fade to black. Somewhere behind me, a car engine started music thumping from its speakers. I didn't feel angry, not really, just done. When I got home, I opened the folder on my desk, the one where I kept every receipt, every bill, every login. I scrolled through the payments, utilities, mortgage, credit card, minimums, insurance. All of them in my name, all of them theirs. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like fixing anything. I closed the folder and sat in the dark until the screen on my phone lit up again, the same text, still unread, still waiting. And right then, I knew something had finally shifted. That line didn't hurt anymore. It told me what to do next. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. My apartment was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you hear your own thoughts. For the first time in a long time, I didn't check my emails or scroll through notifications. I just sat there on the edge of my bed, thinking about that dinner, about my mom's laugh when she called me broke. I opened my laptop. The glow from the screen filled the room, and one by one, I logged into every account I managed: utilities, insurance, credit cards, mortgage. Every single one had my name listed as primary holder. Their names were just authorized users. It was all right there, black and white. I wasn't just helping them, I was carrying them. My coffee went cold as I stared at the list. Each number on that screen was a reminder of how much of my life I'd poured into theirs. I remembered Mom saying, "You're good with money, Ava. You keep us stable." I used to take that as a compliment. Now it sounded like a confession. I clicked on the phone bill first. The account had 5 lines: Mom, Dad, Chloe, her boyfriend, and me. I hovered over the button that said, "Remove user." My hand didn't shake. Click. The next screen asked, "Are you sure you want to proceed?" Yes. Electricity account auto pay off. Water removed payment method. Mortgage changed login credentials. Credit card requested account freeze due to unauthorized use. Each confirmation email that landed in my inbox felt like air coming back into my lungs. It wasn't anger anymore, it was clarity. At one point, the bank app asked me to verify my identity. The rep on the phone was polite, cheerful even. "All right, Ms. Collins, just to confirm you're the sole owner of this account?" I almost laughed. "Yes," I said. "That's kind of the problem." When the last account was locked, I sat back and looked around my apartment. The morning light had started to creep in, soft and gold. I hadn't realized how heavy everything had been until I set it down. I thought about calling Mom, telling her what I'd done. But then I remembered her voice at that restaurant, that little smirk she shared with Chloe. I didn't owe them an explanation. I picked up my phone, opened our family group chat, and scrolled past the messages, birthday plans, grocery lists, thanks Ava, followed by another request for money. I typed a message, then deleted it. No words would do it justice. Instead, I took a deep breath, opened the banking app one more time, and hit the final button, freeze all linked cards. The confirmation appeared instantly. Account successfully frozen. 5 years of holding everything together undone in 5 minutes. I closed the laptop. The room was silent again, but this time it didn't feel empty. It felt mine. Outside, the city was just waking up. Somewhere my mother was probably getting ready for her day, blissfully unaware that the world she'd built on my back had just gone still. And I didn't feel guilty, not even a little. It took 3 days for the silence to break. It started on a Saturday night, Mom's belated birthday dinner, the one she'd been bragging about all week. Chloe had posted pictures of the restaurant's glowing chandeliers and captioned it, "Mom deserves the best." They didn't know yet. I was home eating leftovers on my couch when my phone buzzed once, then again. At first it was just background noise, something I'd learned to ignore. But then it started coming faster, a dozen messages in under a minute. I didn't check them right away. I knew what they were. At the same time, across town, the dinner was unfolding. I could picture it clearly. Mom in her favorite navy dress, Chloe talking too loud, Dad trying to calm everyone when things went wrong, and they did go wrong. The server came with the check, set it down gently on the table. Mom, confident as ever, handed over her card, my card. It must have taken a second for her smile to falter, then a frown. "I'm sorry," the waiter said quietly. "It's been declined." Mom blinked, confused. "That's impossible." "Try again." He did, twice. Same message. Chloe reached into her purse, pulling out her own card. Declined. The server's expression softened in that polite, uncomfortable way that people use when they're watching something fall apart. Could there be a mistake? Dad asked already, knowing there wasn't. The manager came over, speaking softly, trying not to draw attention. But in places like that, whispers move faster than sound. Heads started turning. Mom's voice rose. "There must be some mix-up. These are active accounts." When the waiter offered to bring another terminal, she snatched the receipt and muttered, "Forget it. I'll call the bank myself." That was probably when she saw the notification on her phone. Account temporarily frozen by primary holder. Primary holder. Me. By the time they left the restaurant, my phone was lighting up non-stop. Calls, texts, voicemails stacking one after another. "Ava, something's wrong with the cards. Call me right now. Did you change something?" Answer the phone. 92 missed calls. I let it ring. I washed my dishes slowly, the sound of water running over ceramic mixing with the faint buzz of my phone. I wiped the counter, made tea, and sat by the window. From my apartment, I could see the streetlights, flickering cars, passing people laughing outside bars. The world kept moving. Another voicemail came in. Mom's voice this time trembling, but still trying to sound in control. "Ava, I don't know what's going on, but all the cards are frozen. The mortgage payment bounced. The utilities, too. You need to fix this. This isn't funny." There was a pause, a shaky breath. "Please call me back." I didn't. Instead, I opened my bank app and checked the balances, everything exactly where it should be. No one could touch it now. A few hours later, Chloe texted me directly. "You've gone too far. You're making Mom look stupid." I stared at the screen and typed, "She did that herself," then deleted it. No point. Around midnight, Dad finally tried. His message was shorter. "Your mother's upset. We'll figure this out tomorrow." Tomorrow. That was always the answer. Tomorrow, they'd fix it. Tomorrow, they'd start caring. Tomorrow, I'd go back to being the one who solved everything. But there wouldn't be a tomorrow like that anymore. I turned my phone face down and sat there in the dim light of my kitchen. The kettle clicked softly as it cooled. For the first time, I didn't feel anxious waiting for their calls. I felt calm. Somewhere across the city, the house would be quiet now. No TV humming, no lights glowing. Bills would pile up and the system that kept their world spinning would finally stop. Mom once said I'd never understand what power really was. She was right. I hadn't until now. By Sunday morning, the calls had stopped. I woke up to sunlight spilling across the floor and a phone full of unread messages. I didn't open them. The quiet felt heavy at first, then strangely peaceful, like a room after the music's been turned off and your ears are still adjusting. I made coffee, sat at my small kitchen table, and scrolled through my own accounts. The numbers looked simple for once, just mine. Rent, groceries, gas, no extra names, no shared bills, no guilt. It felt almost unreal seeing my life reduced to what actually belonged to me. A voicemail popped up from Mom. I pressed play. Ava, we didn't realize how much you handled. The bank said only you can unlock the accounts. Can we please talk? We just need to pay a few things. Call me okay. Her voice cracked near the end, that familiar mix of command and desperation. I let it play twice, then deleted it. No anger, no satisfaction, just calm. Later, I went for a walk around the block. The air was cool, the kind of spring air that smells faintly of rain and new leaves. A couple walked by holding hands, laughing. A kid on a bike nearly ran into me and his mom apologized over her shoulder. I smiled and said it was fine, and I meant it. Back at my apartment, I sat by the window again, same spot as the night before. The city hummed outside, a low, steady sound that reminded me I wasn't alone, even if I felt that way sometimes. I thought about everything, the dinners, the jokes, the endless payments. The way Mom used to pat my hand and say, "You're good with money, you'll figure it out." She wasn't wrong. I did figure it out, just not the way she expected. The truth is, I didn't freeze the accounts to punish them. I did it to free myself, to finally stop proving my worth in dollars and receipts. My phone buzzed once more, another message from Mom. "We'll figure it out," she wrote this time. "I'm proud of you, even if you don't believe it." I stared at it for a moment, then locked the screen. Some doors don't need to be slammed to close. I poured another cup of coffee and looked out at the city. The light hit the buildings in that soft golden way that makes everything look cleaner, newer. They called me jealous and broke, but I'm neither. I'm just done paying the price for their comfort and finally at peace with the silence that followed. If this story hit close to home, tell me in the comments, have you ever had to draw a line with your own family? Your story matters here. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you won't miss the next one.
My name is Sharon Moreno. I'm 28 years old, and if you had asked me a year ago what my life looked like, I would have told you I was building a future with the man I loved. I worked as an IT consultant, steady job, good pay, decent apartment in the city, nothing flashy, nothing extravagant, just stability. And for me, stability was love expressed through consistency. Kevin and I had been together for 3 years. He was ambitious, the kind of man who thrived on energy connections and appearances. When he lost his entry-level job early in our relationship, I stepped in without hesitation. I covered his rent, paid for his courses to upskill, even turned down a promotion that would have required me to relocate because he told me, "Babe, I need you here while I build my career." I believed we were a team. I came home from 12-hour days exhausted from debugging code while he dressed in sharp blazers for networking mixers, returning late at night, with stories of who he met and how game-changing the introductions were. I smiled, supported, and told myself this is what love looks like, holding someone up until they can stand on their own. But slowly things began to shift. His comments became little cuts I brushed off at first. "Why don't you dress sharper? My friends' girlfriends always look so put together. You should network more. Sitting behind a screen all day doesn't impress anyone." I told myself he was stressed, that the ambition I admired was just spilling over in ugly ways. We weren't perfect, but I was committed. I imagined myself saying yes someday if he proposed. And then one Friday night, it all shattered. The sushi restaurant was his idea. I hated sushi. The raw fish, the overpriced rolls, the dim lights that made everyone look like they were trying too hard. It wasn't me. But Kevin insisted it's good for us to be seen at places like this. So I went. I tried to make small talk. Rough week. "Tell me about that presentation you were prepping." He barely looked up from his phone, fidgeting, checking his watch. The waiter dropped off our California rolls, and he hadn't even touched the edamame. Something in the air felt heavy wrong. Finally, he set his chopsticks down and looked at me with this smile, soft, almost pitying. I thought maybe he was going to propose. My heart skipped. Instead, he leaned forward and said, "Can I be honest, Sharon? My friends are embarrassed for me when I bring you around." The words didn't make sense at first. Embarrassed, I laughed lightly, waiting for the punchline. But his face stayed stone serious. "You're not impressive," he continued, lowering his voice as though confiding some secret truth. "Like Sarah's boyfriend is a surgeon. He travels to conferences, always has stories. Jess's guy has a boat, takes her away on weekends. And you're just nice. What do I tell people about you? That you sit behind a computer all day?" That's it. It's humiliating. The sushi roll on my plate blurred in front of me. Humiliating. After 3 years of sacrifice, love, support, and devotion, I was humiliating to him. I tried to keep my voice steady. "So this is about how I look to your friends." He sighed, as if I was too slow to grasp it. "It's more than that. I've met someone, Sharon. At that networking event last month, the one you skipped because you were tired. Her name's Vanessa. She's in venture capital. She drives a Tesla. She knows everyone. With her, I feel like I'm elevating. With you, it feels like settling." Settling. He said it like he was doing me a kindness by saying it out loud. My chest felt hollow, like the oxygen had been vacuumed out of the room, but I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, I placed my chopsticks down carefully, as though setting fragile glass onto a table. I slid my half of the bill across to him, stood up, and reached for my coat. His eyes widened slightly, as if he expected me to scream, to beg, to fight for him. But all I said was, "Okay, Kevin. Good luck with that." Then I turned and I walked out. The night air was sharp and cool, hitting my lungs like a wake-up call. Behind me, laughter and clinking glasses echoed from the restaurant. I didn't look back once. My heart was pounding, but my steps were steady. That was the last time I saw Kevin for months. I didn't cry that night. Not when I walked the few blocks back to my car. Not when I drove in silence through the glittering streets of downtown headlights and billboards blurring into streaks. Not even when I opened the door to my apartment, the place I had once called our safe haven. But when I finally sat on the couch, coat still on, I poured a glass of whiskey with shaking hands and stared at the walls. That's when the weight of it pressed down. 3 years. 3 years of sacrifice, of building a future together, of holding him up when he had nothing. And in return, I was told I was humiliating. My phone buzzed with the notification and Instagram tag. Kevin had already posted a picture from the restaurant, smiling with his friends after I left as though nothing had happened. I turned the phone face down, bile rising in my throat. The next morning, I didn't get out of bed until noon. My chest felt heavy, my mind replaying every moment. The time I skipped a company trip to stay by his side during a job interview. The necklace I had saved for with his initials engraved that he wore once and shoved into a drawer. The birthday party where his friends barely acknowledged me while he whispered, "Mingle more next time, Sharon." All the signs had been there. His late nights, his eyes on his phone during our dinners, the sudden distance in his voice. I told myself he was busy, that this was a phase. But the truth was simpler. He had been preparing to discard me. That Sunday, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror. My eyes were swollen, my hair tangled, my face pale. And in the silence, his words echoed, "You're not impressive. You're humiliating." Something inside me snapped, not in anger, but in clarity. I whispered to my reflection, "He called you unimpressive. Prove him wrong." Not for him, not to win him back. For me. The first thing I did was block him. Phone, social media, email. I even changed the locks on my apartment door, not because I thought he'd come back, but because I wanted nothing that tied me to him. Then I went back to the very opportunity I'd once given up for him, the promotion at my firm. I reapplied. 2 weeks later, I got it. Senior consultant, a pay bump, remote flexibility. I moved into a new apartment across town. Smaller, cleaner, stripped of any memory of him. White walls, wooden floors, no clutter. It felt like breathing fresh air for the first time in years. But healing wasn't as cinematic as packing boxes and getting a raise. Some nights, the loneliness still gnawed at me. I'd wake at 2 a.m. with tears on my face, reaching instinctively for someone who wasn't there anymore. Still, each morning I forced myself to run. At first it was barely half a mile before I was bent over gasping. But each day I went a little further. By week 3 I could run 2 miles without stopping. By month's end 5. The runs weren't just about fitness, they were about reclaiming control. With every step pounding the pavement, I told myself, "You are not the woman he said you were. You are more." Work became my anchor. I threw myself into projects, leading meetings, landing clients. For the first time, my colleagues looked at me, not as someone dependable in the background, but as a leader. One evening, as I shut my laptop after a 12-hour day, I realized I hadn't thought about Kevin once. That realization lit something inside me. If he had stayed, I might never have applied for that promotion. I might never have run those miles. I might never have realized that stability and strength weren't boring. They were the foundation of becoming unstoppable. One night, standing in my new apartment, a single lamp casting light across the room, I looked at my reflection again. My hair was damp from a post-run shower, my skin flushed, my body leaner, my eyes brighter. I didn't see the broken woman from weeks ago. I saw someone rebuilding herself from the ground up. I whispered again, this time louder, steadier. If stability is boring, then I'll make boring powerful. For the first time in months, I smiled. The months that followed weren't easy, but they were defining. Pain had burned me hollow, but in that emptiness, there was room to build something new. I started with discipline. Each morning, my alarm rang at 6 a.m. I laced up my sneakers, even when my body screamed to stay in bed. The city streets were still gray, shop shutters closed, dew clinging to the sidewalks. My breath clouded in the cool dawn air as I pushed myself further each day. By the third month, my body felt stronger, my lungs steadier, my heart lighter. At the gym, I added weights. The soft curves Kevin once mocked as safe hardened into strength. I wasn't building myself for approval anymore. I was building myself to feel unshakable. Every curl, every squat, every mile was a rebellion against the version of me he tried to define. Work thrived too. I learned to speak up in meetings, no longer letting my ideas drown in the background. Clients began asking for me, specifically trusting my clear solutions over polished jargon. My boss pulled me aside one Friday afternoon. "Sharon, you've stepped into yourself. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." Hearing that felt like a quiet victory. Then came the side hustle. It started almost accidentally. A colleague's friend needed freelance coding help for a startup app. I took it on. The pay was better than I expected. Soon referrals trickled in. Within 6 months, my side projects alone were earning me more than my old salary. The bank account grew, but more importantly, so did my confidence. Kevin once said I wasn't impressive, but now I was building a life that even he couldn't have imagined for me. And then there was the group hike. It was a crisp Saturday morning, golden sunlight spilling through the trees. The air smelled of pine and damp earth. I joined a local hiking group to push myself beyond running and weights craving nature instead of city concrete. That's where I met him, Michael. He wasn't loud or flashy, no designer sneakers, no pretentious energy, just a worn backpack, a quick smile, and an easy way of making conversation. We ended up walking side by side, laughing about how terrible instant coffee tastes on early hikes. It was effortless, no need to impress, no need to perform. When he asked what I did, I told him simply, "IT consultant, and I do some coding for startups." He didn't blink, didn't compare me to anyone. He just said, "That's awesome. You must be good at problem solving. I can barely fix my printer." It sounds silly, but that line made me laugh harder than I had in months. A week later, he invited me to a small creative meetup, not a networking circus full of champagne glasses and status chasers like Kevin used to drag me to. This was different people sharing projects, art ideas. The air smelled of coffee, not desperation. Michael introduced me to friends who cared about stories, not resumes. That night, as I walked home, I realized I hadn't thought once about how I looked or whether anyone was impressed. I was simply present. Our first real date wasn't at a rooftop bar or a trendy restaurant. It was a picnic in the park. He brought homemade sandwiches, a blanket, and a deck of cards. The simplicity of it nearly made me cry. At one point, as I was laughing at my losing streak in cards, he leaned back on his elbows and said, "You know what I like about you, Sharon? You're grounded. That's rare." Grounded, not boring, not humiliating, grounded. That one word felt like a balm over every wound Kevin had left behind. Meanwhile, online, my quiet rebuild didn't go unnoticed. I wasn't flashy, but I posted snapshots of hikes, new recipes, the occasional project milestone. Slowly, likes and comments trickled in. Not from Kevin, but from his old circle, Sarah, Jess, the same women who once looked down on me at parties. "Looking strong, Sharon. Wow, impressive project." I ignored most of it. It wasn't about them anymore. But a quiet irony simmered beneath it all. While Kevin had traded me in for someone more impressive, the same people he wanted to impress were now watching me, not him. One evening, as Michael and I packed up after another simple picnic, he asked gently, "So, do you ever hear from your ex?" I shook my head, staring out at the orange horizon. Not yet, but something tells me one day I will. The words felt prophetic, like the calm before a storm. It was about 4 months after the sushi night when I first heard the whispers. Chris, the only mutual friend who hadn't chosen sides, dropped the news casually over coffee. Kevin's all over social media with Vanessa. Weekend trips, champagne, Tesla selfies. He's calling her his business partner, says they're starting a company together. I stirred my latte slowly, keeping my expression neutral. Good for him, I said, though inside there was a bitter twist. Kevin had moved on fast, flaunting the power couple image I had never been flashy enough to provide. But deep down I knew. Things too perfect, too polished, rarely last. Weeks later, the cracks began to show. One evening, I was finishing a late-night coding session when Sarah, Sarah, who once ignored me at Kevin's birthday party, liked one of my posts on LinkedIn. Then another, a hiking picture, a project update. Odd, I thought. The next day, Chris texted again. "You didn't hear this from me, but Vanessa isn't what she claims. That whole venture capitalist thing, smoke and mirrors. She's been propping up her image with borrowed money. And Kevin, he quit his stable job to follow her." I leaned back in my chair, staring at the message, a strange mix of disbelief and inevitability settling in. From what I pieced together through whispers and mutuals, Vanessa was a con artist of sorts. She dazzled rooms with Tesla rides and stories about closing deals, but in reality, she was drowning in debt from failed ventures. Kevin had fallen for it completely. He bragged about their startup, convinced he was on the verge of success. Meanwhile, Vanessa drained his accounts, first small loans, then credit cards, then rent money. The same Kevin who once sneered at me for being boring and stable was now funding a fantasy. By month 6, the truth detonated. Vanessa disappeared. Gone. She blocked his number, left him with shared bills, and skipped town. The startup folded overnight. Suddenly, Kevin was alone, broke and abandoned. Meanwhile, my life had never been steadier. I'd just landed my biggest freelance client yet, a tech startup that valued substance over shine. The kind of project Kevin would have dismissed as unimpressive, but the paycheck. It spoke volumes. I crossed a finish line at my first half marathon that same month, sweat pouring down my face, lungs on fire, but a smile stretching wide. I had built strength inside and out. Michael was there waiting with a water bottle clapping and grinning, like I'd just won an Olympic medal. "Told you you'd crush it," he said, pulling me into a hug that smelled of sun and grass. And yet, karma wasn't done. A week later, Chris leaned across the bar table during one of our catch-ups. His voice dropped low. "Kevin's not doing great. Word is he's couch surfing now." Vanessa wiped him out. "And his friends. They've started pulling away. It's awkward, I guess. Status disappears fast when the money does." I sipped my drink slowly, a strange calm washing over me. Once that news would have torn me apart, either from guilt or misplaced longing. But now I felt nothing. Nothing but a quiet, steady certainty that the universe had handled it for me. That night, scrolling through my muted social feeds, I found one of Kevin's latest posts. No Tesla, no champagne, just a vague caption. Sometimes you find out who's real when everything falls apart. For a moment, I stared at the screen, and then I closed the app. Set my phone down and turned to Michael, who was sketching designs at my kitchen table. "Want to go for a walk?" I asked. He looked up, smiled, and nodded. As we stepped out into the cool evening, our hands brushing before linking together, I realized something profound. Kevin's chaos no longer had a place in my story. But I knew one day, when the loneliness became unbearable for him, he would come knocking. And when he did, I'd be ready. It started quietly. A vibration at 2:07 a.m. lit up my nightstand. Groggy, I reached for my phone, expecting a calendar reminder, or maybe a work email. Instead, the name on the screen froze me, Kevin. Blocked months ago. He must have found another number. The message glared. "Hey, Sharon, been thinking about us. Can we talk?" My chest tightened, not from longing, but from the sting of intrusion. After everything, he still thought he could just slip back in with a late-night text. I didn't reply. 2 nights later, another one. I know I messed up. Vanessa was a mistake, I should have appreciated you when I had you. You were my stability. Stability, the very word he'd once spat like it was an insult. Now it was his lifeline. I locked my phone, slid it face down, and whispered into the dark, "Too late." But he didn't stop. The messages grew longer, more desperate. "I miss your cooking. Remember your pasta nights? Vanessa never cared about real things like that." My friends turned their backs on me. "You're the only one who ever really cared. Sharon, please, I need you." Need. Not want. Not love. Need. I kept silent. Then came the middlemen. One afternoon, Sarah texted me out of nowhere. "Hey, stranger. Kevin's really hurting. Maybe just hear him out. He's changed." I nearly laughed. Changed. He hadn't changed. He was just broken in a way that made him crawl. I typed a short reply, not interested. Hope he finds peace. That night, Jess called, her voice dripping with condescension. "Come on, Sharon, don't be petty. He thought he was upgrading, and yeah, it blew up. But you owe him some closure after 3 years." I let the silence stretch until she shifted uncomfortably on the other end. Then I said calmly, "No, Jess, I don't owe him anything," and hung up. But Kevin wasn't finished. One Sunday morning, Michael and I were at our favorite cafe, Sun, streaming through wide windows. The smell of fresh bread heavy in the air. We were laughing over a spilled cappuccino when a shadow fell across our table. "Sharon." The voice was cracked hollow. I turned, and there he was, Kevin. He looked nothing like the man who had once strutted into rooms with Vanessa on his arm. His hair was unkempt shirt, wrinkled eyes sunken. Desperation clung to him like a second skin. "Please," he stammered, voice trembling. "Just 5 minutes, that's all I ask." Michael tensed beside me, ready to intervene, but I raised a hand subtly. My heart thudded not with fear, but with an almost cold clarity. "What do you want, Kevin?" My tone was steady, unflinching. He sank into the empty chair without waiting for permission. Words tumbled from him jagged and fast. "Vanessa used me, took everything. My savings, my cards, my friends. They're gone. I see now you were the real thing. You were the one who mattered. I was stupid. Please, Sharon, we can start over. I need you." The cafe hummed around us, but in that small bubble, it was just him and me. I studied him. This broken man who once told me I humiliated him, who traded me for glitter and lies, now begging at my table. I leaned forward, my voice low but firm. "You once called me unimpressive. You said I embarrassed you. Look at yourself now, Kevin. Do you think I could ever go back to that?" His face crumpled, panic flickering. "I didn't mean it like that. I was pressured. My friends." I cut him off with a shake of my head. "No excuses. You made your choice. And so did I." I stood, slipping my hand into Michael's. "This is my life now. You don't belong in it." We walked out together, leaving Kevin slumped in the chair, eyes wide, mouth open, but powerless. As the cafe door closed behind us, sunlight spilled across my face. I felt lighter, stronger. For the first time, I realized rejecting him wasn't just about punishing him. It was about protecting the woman I had become. After that cafe encounter, something shifted in me. For months, I had been bracing myself for the possibility of seeing Kevin again, imagining what I'd say, how I'd feel. But when it finally happened, when I looked into his hollow eyes and heard his desperate pleas, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel longing. I felt nothing, and in that nothingness I found freedom. My days no longer carried his shadow. Mornings began with sunrise. Runs the rhythm of my footsteps syncing with my breath. I stopped counting miles and started counting moments, the orange streak of dawn across the sky, the smell of fresh rain on the pavement, the burn in my calves that told me I was alive and moving forward. Work flourished. I was trusted with projects that once would have been handed to the more impressive faces in the room. I negotiated contracts with a steady voice and shook hands with confidence. The title on my email signature no longer felt like an achievement for someone else's approval, it felt like mine. And Michael, he became a constant. Not with fireworks or grand gestures, but with small grounding things. Warm tea waiting for me after late nights of coding. Sketches he'd leave on sticky notes for me to find in the morning. The way he laughed full and unrestrained when I beat him at cards during our picnics. It was simple, it was real, and it was enough. Kevin, meanwhile, didn't stop trying. Blocked on one number, he found another. Ignored on one platform, he created a new account. The messages changed in tone, first pleading, then angry. "I can't believe you're this cold. After 3 years, you won't even meet me halfway. You're nothing without me. Don't forget that. Michael doesn't know you like I do. He'll leave just like everyone else." But his words, once sharp enough to pierce me, now fell flat. They were the last gasps of a drowning man flailing for anything to pull him back afloat. And I was no longer his lifeline. One evening, Michael and I were at a rooftop bar. Nothing fancy, just a cozy spot with fairy lights strung overhead and a jazz band playing softly in the corner. Kevin showed up, again. This time his face wasn't just tired, it was hardened, resentful. He stepped up to our table, ignoring Michael completely, eyes locked on me. "How can you be so heartless?" he hissed. "You're really going to throw away 3 years like it was nothing. You think you're better than me now?" The air between us went still. The music faded to the background conversations around us muffled. I leaned back in my chair, calm, unflinching. "No, Kevin, I don't think I'm better than you. I think I'm better than who I used to be with you." For a second, his face twisted rage, shame, something he couldn't put into words. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, fists clenched at his sides. Michael reached over, his hands steady on mine. And just like that, Kevin's presence shrank to nothing. He stormed off, muttering under his breath, swallowed by the noise of the city night. Walking home later, Michael asked gently, "Does it ever get to you?" Seeing him like that, I thought for a moment before answering. "No," I said. "It reminds me why I chose myself, why I'll never go back." Because the truth was, Kevin's downfall wasn't my revenge. It was his own choices catching up with him. My revenge was quieter, simpler. It was peace. As weeks passed, the messages stopped. The sightings dwindled. His name stopped appearing in conversations. And slowly the man who once loomed so large in my world became a ghost, faded, irrelevant, powerless. Meanwhile, I kept living, laughing, building, loving. And for the first time in my adult life, I felt untouchable. It happened on a night I didn't expect. Chris invited me to his birthday low-key rooftop bar. String lights swaying in the evening breeze, laughter rolling across the crowd. Michael was at my side, hand warm against mine as we walked in. The moment we stepped inside, I felt it. The shift in the air, eyes turning toward me. Not in judgment, not in pity, just recognition. "Sharon, you look incredible," Sarah called out, rushing over in a sequined dress. She hugged me tight, too tight, like we were old friends. Jess followed her smile, syrupy. "That promotion you posted about goals, seriously, you've been glowing lately." I smiled politely. These were the same women who once whispered that I wasn't enough. Now they hung on to my every word. But then I saw him. Kevin. He stood alone by the bar nursing a drink. His shirt wrinkled, his posture sagging. The shimmer was gone, no Tesla, no sparkling woman on his arm. Just a man stripped bare of the illusions he once wore like armor. When his eyes met mine, they widened. He set the glass down with a clink and made his way over. "Sharon," he said, voice shaky, "you look different, beautiful." I tilted my head, calm. "Do I know you?" The words hit him like a slap. His face crumpled. "Sharon, come on, don't do this. It's me. Kevin." I let the silence stretch before I replied, voice even. "Right, Kevin. From back then." He stepped closer, desperation spilling through every movement. I need you to know I'm sorry. For the sushi night. For the things I said. Vanessa destroyed me, but it opened my eyes. You were the only real thing I ever had. Please, can we try again? Even just talk." The crowd around us seemed to fade. I saw only him, the man who once called me humiliating, now humbled to ashes. I drew a breath steady and let my words slice clean. "You said I wasn't impressive, that I embarrassed you. And now look at us. I'm thriving. You're begging. Tell me who should be embarrassed now." His lips parted, but no sound came out. He looked smaller somehow, shrinking under the weight of truth. I shook my head gently. "I don't hate you, Kevin. I don't even pity you. You're just irrelevant." I turned, threading my arm through Michael's, and smiled at him. His eyes, steady and warm, told me everything I needed. I was exactly where I belonged. Behind me, Kevin's voice cracked one last time. "You'll regret this." But the words bounced off me like rain on glass. I didn't even glance back. Later, as the party wound down, Sarah leaned close and whispered almost conspiratorial, "She's spiraling, you know. But you, Sharon, you've upgraded. Seriously." I just smiled, sipping my drink, her words rolling over me like distant thunder. Because the truth was, I didn't need validation anymore, not from Sarah, not from Jess, not from Kevin. I had already won, by choosing myself. Weeks passed after that party, and Kevin faded completely from my world. No more texts, no more sightings, no more whispers. It was as if the universe had finally closed the book on him. And me. My life kept unfolding, page by page, brighter with each chapter. Saturday mornings became sacred runs at sunrise, followed by coffee with Michael, who always had some half-finished sketch to show me. Evenings, I poured energy into my freelance work, watching it grow from side hustle to something I could be proud of. There was no performance, no need to impress, just quiet fulfillment. Sometimes, when I caught my reflection in the mirror, I barely recognized myself, not because I looked different, though I did, but because I felt different. This was the version of me Kevin never wanted to see, confident, self-assured, thriving, without his validation. One night, as Michael and I sat on the balcony of my apartment's city lights, twinkling in the distance, he asked me softly, "Do you ever think about him anymore?" I thought for a moment, sipping my tea, listening to the hum of traffic below. "Not really," I said. "He was a chapter, an ugly one, but if it hadn't ended the way it did, I don't think I'd be here now." Michael reached over, brushing his thumb across my hand. "Then maybe he did you a favor." I smiled faintly. Maybe. But the real favor was realizing I didn't need him or anyone to prove I was enough. Sometimes through mutuals, I still heard pieces of Kevin's story. How he struggled to find work again. How old friends avoided him at gatherings. How he posted cryptic messages about betrayal and second chances. But by then, he was just a ghost, a cautionary echo. Meanwhile, Sarah and Jess, those who once rolled their eyes at me, were suddenly the ones liking my posts, dropping comments like, "So proud of you," and "inspiring." The irony didn't sting anymore. It barely registered, because I wasn't living for their approval either. And here's what I learned the truth. I want anyone listening to carry with them. Sometimes betrayal isn't the end of you, it's the beginning. Kevin thought I was unimpressive, that I wasn't enough for his glittering world, but in reality, it was his world that was hollow. My so-called boring stability became the foundation of a life stronger, fuller, and freer than I ever imagined. The last time I saw him, his face was full of regret. Mine, full of peace. Because the sweetest revenge wasn't making him jealous. It wasn't proving him wrong to his face. It was simply living a life so authentic, so grounded, that his opinion no longer mattered. As I sit here now, looking back, I can say with certainty, he once said I wasn't impressive. But I never needed to be impressive for anyone else. I just needed to be enough for myself. And I am. My name is Connie McMillan, and I was 28 when my entire life unraveled in a single summer evening. If anyone had asked back then, they would have said I was the stable one, the dependable fiancé, the woman who gave up pieces of herself so her partner could shine. I thought that was love sacrifice disguised as devotion. Preston and I had been together for 4 years, engaged for 2. We met in college. He was majoring in marketing, while I was drowning in late-night design projects, pulling all-nighters to polish presentations. He had charm, I had discipline. At least that's how I framed it. I told myself we balanced each other out. But balance can tip without you noticing. Right after graduation, I had an offer for my dream role at a design firm in Chicago, 3 hours from where Preston had landed an entry-level position. He begged me to move with him. "We'll build our life together, Riss," he'd said, calling me by the nickname only he used. "It'll be worth it." So I turned it down. I took a smaller remote contract that paid less, left the city lights for a cramped apartment near his office. I told myself this was temporary, that supporting him now meant we'd both thrive later. I paid the bills, made the dinners, rehearsed his presentation pitches with him. Whenever doubt whispered, when he came home late talking about some glamorous colleague or the yoga instructor he swore was just friendly, I silenced it. Preston was just outgoing. I was secure enough to trust. But trust isn't a shield. Sometimes it blinds you. The unraveling began 6 months before the blow-up. Preston got promoted coordinator, more travel, more after-hours events. He began comparing me to shadows. My ex was so spontaneous, whisking me off on road trips. "Look at this influencer, she's magnetic. Guys like that don't settle." Each jab stung, but I smoothed it over with patience. Wasn't love about endurance? Yet the words stayed tucked beneath my ribs, sharper with every repeat. I'd lie awake at night, ceiling fans spinning above me, and wonder, am I too safe? Too steady? Did I give too much away? I didn't have answers. Only the unease that grew like a knot in my chest. The breaking point came at his family's summer barbecue. It was one of those sprawling backyard affairs. Burgers sizzling, kids shrieking in the pool, plastic cups sweating in the heat. Preston's parents loved their drama as much as their potato salad. His mother meddled, his father grumbled along, and whispers flowed faster than the lemonade. Noah, Preston's younger brother, was there too. 25 an artist part-time model, and the unintentional contrast to Preston's polished ambition. Where Preston chased status, Noah carried an easy authenticity. We'd always gotten along. He'd crash at our place sometimes, asking me to help digitize his sketches, but nothing beyond casual friendliness. That day, I tried to blend into the noise. I manned the grill, laughed at small talk with Preston's uncles, told myself everything was fine. But Preston was different. He spent the afternoon orbiting Jade, a friend of a cousin, all gloss lips and stories about backpacking Europe. She wasn't even officially invited, but Preston clung to her anecdotes like they were oxygen. He leaned close, hand brushing her arm, laughing too loudly at every line. I caught his sleeve as he passed by the pool house. "Preston, can we talk? Just come here for a second." He followed, rolling his eyes like I'd interrupted a show. Behind us, the sounds of splashing faded, leaving only the cicadas buzzing. "What's going on?" I asked quietly. "You've been distant all day." He smirked, crossing his arms. "Distant, Connie. You're the one who's always predictable. Jade was just telling me about her trip to Greece. Spontaneity. Fun. When's the last time we did something like that?" My stomach dropped. I kept my voice calm, almost pleading. "We're engaged. If something's wrong, let's work it out. But flirting in front of everyone, Preston, that's humiliating." His laugh was sharp, cutting through me. "Flirting. Please. It's harmless. You know I could have a new girlfriend by tomorrow morning if I wanted. Women line up for me, successful, exciting ones. Not someone who plays it safe, designing from her laptop while I build real connections." The words were a slap. "What are you saying?" "After everything, moving for your job, supporting you through your rough patch last year, none of that mattered." He waved a hand, dismissive. "Come on, don't make this dramatic. You were great as a starter pack, stable, reliable. But I deserve more now. Passion. Adventure. Jade gets it. She has her own projects, she travels, she knows what ambition looks like. You're holding me back, Connie. Safe isn't enough anymore." The twisted logic burned in his eyes. He truly believed it. I swallowed, voice trembling but firm. "So all my sacrifices turning down Chicago, carrying us, when you couldn't, that was just me being a starter pack." We both got something. He shot back louder now. "I gave you stability too. But face it, you'll never be the woman who sweeps anyone off their feet. You're replaceable." He snapped his fingers, smirking. "By tomorrow, I could be with someone who actually excites me. Everyone here knows I can do better. Even Noah thinks you're too boring for me." That last line struck harder than all the others. A lie I knew. Noah had never said such a thing. In fact, he'd defended me in quiet ways before. But Preston twisted it, weaponized it, and smiled as if he'd won. Something in me broke. Not loudly, not in a burst of rage. No, my breaking point was quiet, cold, a clarity that spread through me like frost. I looked him in the eye. "If that's how you feel, good luck with that." He blinked, thrown off. "Wait, that's it. You're not even going to fight for this. Why would I? You've already made your choice." I turned, walked past the laughter. The smell of smoke from the grill, the stares of his family who'd heard enough to guess. I grabbed my keys from the picnic table. He called after me, voice dripping with arrogance. "Fine, go. You'll regret this." But regret was already his. He just didn't know it yet. That night, I packed essentials into a duffel laptop, closed the sketchbook I hadn't touched in months. By midnight, I was gone. The road stretched ahead, empty, except for the hum of my car. I didn't scream, didn't plead. My silence was heavier than any outburst could be. And though I couldn't see it then, that silence was the beginning of everything. The first night away from Preston's house felt like exile. I checked into a low-rent motel off the highway, the kind with flickering neon signs, that hummed louder than the air conditioner. The sheets smelled of bleach, the walls thin enough to hear the couple next door arguing. I sat on the edge of the bed with my duffel bag at my feet, staring at the chipped nightstand as if answers would appear there. Instead, all I had were questions. Was I too safe, too predictable? Did I smother the spark without realizing? The word starter pack replayed in my head like a cruel chant. Starter pack, reliable, replaceable. It didn't matter how many times I reminded myself of the sacrifices I'd made, turning down my dream job, carrying us through his rough seasons, putting my ambitions in storage so his could expand. The echo of his dismissal made it feel like none of it counted. I stayed in that motel for 3 days, barely eating my laptop balanced on my knees, as I pretended to focus on remote work. Bugs to fix, designs to tweak, but none of it landed. The hum of the mini fridge became my soundtrack, its relentless buzz drilling into me as if it wanted to expose how hollow I felt. On the fourth morning, I called a therapist, a virtual session over grainy video chat. The counselor was calm, her tone steady as I unraveled. I don't understand. I gave him everything, and he threw me away like I was nothing. Maybe I'm the problem. Maybe I was too safe, too boring. She shook her head gently. When someone betrays you like that, it's not about you. It's about them. He's projecting his own emptiness, trying to make you carry it. I wanted to believe her, but healing isn't instant. Her words were seeds I wouldn't see them grow until much later. Meanwhile, Preston paraded his new life like a trophy. Friends sent me screenshots, his arms slung around jade captions, bragging about living spontaneously and finding someone who truly matches my fire. They posted pictures at rooftop bars, hotel lobbies, weekends away. Each photo twisted the knife. He hadn't just replaced me, he wanted the world to watch. But cracks showed quickly. A friend of his cousin messaged me late one night. Don't tell anyone I said this, but Preston's already complaining about Jade. Says she's too much work, high maintenance. I think he regrets the whole thing. I didn't reply. I just stared at the message until the words blurred. Regret. He'd regret it, but what good would that do me? I kept drifting between numbness and pain, circling the same thoughts like a dog chasing its tail. To keep from spiraling, I wrote, pages in a cheap spiral notebook, scribbles of self-doubt, anger, fear. Some entries were only one line, I feel like a ghost. Others sprawled for pages, furious questions I'd never get answers to. When the words weren't enough, I ran, lacing up sneakers I hadn't touched in months, pounding the cracked sidewalks until my lungs burned. The movement gave me back something. Preston had taken the sense that my body was mine, not just a vessel for his ambitions. About a week into my exile, my phone buzzed with a message from an unfamiliar handle. It was Noah. Hey, Connie, I heard what happened. Are you okay? I stared at it, torn. Was this pity a setup? Preston's family was tight-knit, bound by toxic loyalty. His mother had always made it clear she thought I wasn't good enough. Why would Noah reach out now? But I remembered Preston's words at the barbecue, his cruel twist. Even Noah thinks you're boring. It had felt like a lie then. Maybe this was proof. I'll survive, I typed back. Thanks for asking. Noah's reply came fast. For what it's worth, I never said what Preston claimed. You weren't boring. You deserved better. A knot I hadn't realized I was carrying loosened in my chest. For the first time in weeks, I felt seen. Meanwhile, Preston's world began to wobble. I didn't seek updates, but they arrived anyway, whispered through mutual friends, leaked in late-night texts. Jade dumped him after a weekend trip, complaining he was controlling. Another fling fizzled when Preston's jealous streak turned ugly. His social media posts shifted from bragging to vague self-pity. Learning who my real friends are. Not all that glitters is gold. I didn't gloat. I couldn't. It still hurt too much. But part of me noted the irony. His tomorrow morning replacement had barely lasted a month. By the end of that summer, I'd rented a small studio apartment downtown. A cramped space with peeling paint and a balcony that looked out over traffic, but it was mine. I filled it with plants, cooked simple meals, ran in the mornings before logging into work. Slowly, the rhythm soothed me. Each day was still laced with ache, but at least the ache was quieter. Noah texted occasionally, little check-ins, nothing heavy. Did you eat today? Or I found a new sketchbook. Want me to drop it by? I never let the conversations drift too far. The last thing I wanted was to be seen as clinging to Preston's brother. But beneath the restraint, I felt the faintest flicker of safety. Noah's words weren't drenched in pity or judgment. They were simply kind. Kindness I hadn't realized I'd been starving for. Then one night, as I sat journaling on the balcony, my phone buzzed with a new number. The message was short. Connie, it's Preston. Can we talk? I miss what we had. I stared at it, my stomach twisting. The same man who had snapped his fingers and said he could replace me by tomorrow. The same man who humiliated me in front of 30 people. Now reaching for me. For a flicker of a second, old instincts stirred the urge to explain, to soothe, to fix. But I crushed it. I turned off my phone, laid it face down on the table, and let the city noise drown out his ghost. The first refusal, small but powerful. And though Preston didn't know it yet, that silence marked the beginning of his collapse. I didn't answer Preston's text. Not that night, not the next. I blocked the number before I could waver. But silence has its own weight. At first it felt like victory. Then it settled like an ache in my ribs. What if cutting him off made me invisible, erased everything we'd ever been? That fear lingered, but it never outweighed the memory of his smirk at the barbecue. Replaceable. That word had carved itself too deep. By September, life had steadied into something resembling routine. I woke early, laced my sneakers, ran the same stretch of cracked sidewalk until I could measure progress in distance rather than pain. My apartment was still cluttered with half-unpacked boxes, but it was mine. I'd fill the silence with music candles burning as I cooked dinner for one. Loneliness would creep in anyway, curling around the edges of my evenings. But at least it was honest. Loneliness, unlike Preston, never lied. It was during one of those quiet nights that Noah showed up at my door. He stood there holding a sketchbook, hair mussed, his shirt smudged faintly with charcoal. "You left some of my stuff at the old place," he said, lifting the book. Figured I'd drop it off. I hesitated, nerves prickling. Letting Preston's brother into my new life felt like crossing some invisible line. Still, I stepped aside. Inside, he glanced around, taking in the mismatched furniture, the half-dead fern on the windowsill. He didn't laugh or pity me. Instead, he smiled. "It's cozy. Peaceful." I huffed a laugh. That's one word for it. We ended up on the balcony, the city humming below. Noah flipped open the sketchbook, showing me new designs, figures with heavy shading eyes that seemed to hold too much sorrow. "They've been darker lately," he admitted. "I guess the family tension seeps into everything." I studied the lines, recognizing myself in the heaviness. Dark doesn't mean bad. Sometimes it's just honest. Our eyes met briefly, an understanding passing without words. For the first time in months, I felt less alone. Meanwhile, Preston's unraveling was no longer subtle. Whispers trickled in through mutual friends, growing louder each week. The rooftop dates with Jade had ended abruptly after she accused him of being clingy. Another fling barely lasted 2 weeks. Apparently, Preston's temper surfaced whenever he felt ignored. His Instagram shifted from polished confidence to messy late-night rants, posts about betrayal, about how people never appreciate loyalty. Selfies with forced smiles, eyes hollow behind the filters. I didn't comment. I didn't gloat. But sometimes late at night, I'd scroll through the wreckage and think, this is the man who thought I was holding him back. A month after our balcony talk, Noah texted, "Want to get coffee, neutral ground." I almost said no. The line still scared me. What would people say? What would Preston twist it into? But then I remembered Preston's words, "Even Noah thinks you're boring." Lies had already been spoken in my name. The least I could do was live my truth. So I agreed. The cafe was tucked on a corner, warm light, spilling through its windows. Autumn leaves swirling outside. Noah was already there, sketching absently on a napkin. When he saw me, he grinned, not the polished charm of Preston, but something softer, real. We talked for hours. About art, about how suffocating family expectations could be, about the strange relief of starting over when you had nothing left to lose. At one point, he said quietly, "I saw how Preston treated you, Connie. It wasn't right. He made it sound like you were just background noise, but I always noticed how much you carried. I thought you deserved better." The words lodged in my chest. I wanted to brush them off, call them kindness, but something deeper stirred. Still, I drew boundaries. When Noah offered to walk me home, I declined politely. This is complicated enough already. He didn't push, just nodded that easy acceptance I was still learning to trust. As I walked back alone through the crisp night air, I realized something strange. For the first time in months, my loneliness felt less suffocating. Preston must have sensed the shift, because his attempts to claw back into my life grew desperate. Blocked numbers left voicemails, some pleading, some bitter. "I miss you, Riss. We were good together." Then, "You think you're better off. You're nothing without me." Nothing. One evening, as I was cooking pasta, my buzzer rang. I froze, dread curling low in my stomach. When I opened the door, Preston was standing there, his suit rumpled eyes glassy. "Connie, please, just hear me out." I held the door half shut. There's nothing left to say. He leaned closer, voice cracking. "Those girls, they were nothing. You were the real deal. I was stupid. I see that now." For a heartbeat, the old instinct tugged, comfort him, fix him, save him. But then I remembered. Jade remembered the barbecue, remembered his smirk as he snapped his fingers. I shook my head. "You said you could replace me by tomorrow. Looks like tomorrow didn't work out." The words landed like ice. He flinched, eyes flashing from sorrow to rage. "You'll regret this." I closed the door softly, the click of the lock echoing louder than his threats. On the other side, silence pressed against the wood. My pulse hammered, but my resolve held. Preston's collapse wasn't just beginning, it was accelerating. And in the quiet that followed, I realized mine wasn't a collapse at all. It was a rebuild. By winter, the shine Preston clung to had dulled beyond repair. Whispers filtered through mutual friends. Preston had been warned at work for crossing lines with a client. What he framed as networking turned into complaints about inappropriate flirting. His charm, the very thing he'd weaponized against me, had become a liability. When the layoffs came, his name was on the list. Not because of budget cuts, but because management had had enough. I heard all this secondhand. I didn't ask. I didn't need to. The silence on his once busy social media account said enough. Where there had been rooftop photos and captions about adventure, there were now cryptic stories about betrayal, about fake friends and toxic people who never stay loyal. Each one was a projection, each one a fragment of the man who once told me I was too predictable. And then his mother called. I should have known it was coming. She'd always been his shield, his voice of entitlement. Still hearing her on my voicemail twisted my stomach. "Connie, it's me. Preston's going through a rough patch. He needs you. You can't just abandon him like this after everything." I played it twice, hands trembling, then deleted it. But the guilt clung like smoke after a fire. 2 days later, she called again, more insistent. "You owe him a conversation. He built a life with you. How dare you turn your back when he needs stability?" I pressed the phone to my ear, jaw tight, before finally answering. "Mrs. Stone, with all due respect, your son threw me away. He told me I was replaceable. I don't owe him anything." Her voice sharpened. "Don't be selfish, Connie. Women like you are supposed to stand by their men." The old me, the girl who silenced herself for harmony, might have folded, but now the words came clear, steady. "No, not anymore." I hung up before she could reply. My hand shook, but my chest felt lighter than it had in months. That night I dreamt of Preston standing in my apartment, his smirk twisting into rage. I woke to my buzzer blaring, heart hammering. It was him. Through the peephole, I saw his shoulders slumped, his hair unkempt, his eyes frantic. He pounded on the door. "Connie, please open up. Just 5 minutes." I froze, breath shallow. The therapist's words echoed, "Betrayal isn't about you. It's about them." And yet the sight of him, reduced, broken, rattled me. My body remembered every late night I'd held him when he was stressed, every sacrifice I'd made. But memory doesn't erase truth. I spoke through the door. "Go home, Preston." His tone shifted, cracking under desperation. "You were right for me. Not Jade, not anyone else. I was stupid. You're the only one who ever stayed." I shut my eyes, leaning against the wood. For a split second, my heart tugged. But then I remembered the barbecue. Remembered his voice sharp as glass. "You're replaceable. Everyone knows I can do better." The pity dissolved. "You only want me because everyone else left. That's not love. That's convenience." He growled under his breath, slamming his palm against the door. "You'll regret this. Don't forget who gave you everything." A bitter laugh escaped me unplanned. "Everything, Preston, I gave you everything. You burned it." Silence. Then the sound of his footsteps retreating down the hall. I slid to the floor, exhaling shakily, adrenaline pulsing through me. A part of me wondered if he'd come back again, if his desperation would turn into something darker. Noah noticed the shift immediately. He stopped by the next day bringing groceries, under the pretense of helping stock my empty fridge. I didn't tell him everything, just that Preston had shown up. Still, Noah's jaw tightened, his usual calm giving way to protectiveness. "If he pushes again, call me. Don't deal with this alone." I nodded, grateful though. Guilt flickered. Was I dragging Noah into something he shouldn't have to bear? He was Preston's brother, after all. But Noah only shrugged, as if reading my hesitation. Preston made his choices. I'm making mine. By February, Preston's collapse was public. His parents whispered excuses, but friends whispered truths. He was living back in his childhood bedroom, temping at odd jobs, his pride shriveling by the day. He posted long, rambling rants at 2 a.m., accusing vague enemies, lamenting betrayal. The comments dwindled, sympathy thinning, as people realized the common denominator in every story was him. I stopped reading, not out of ignorance, but because his downfall no longer fed me. My energy was my own again. One evening, as snow fell softly outside my window, I sat across from Noah at a quiet diner. He was sketching absent-mindedly on a napkin, his fingers stained with graphite. "Funny," he said, glancing up. "Preston used to say you were too safe. But safety doesn't mean boring. Safety means trust. That's what people want most, even if they don't realize it." I studied him, the warmth in his eyes. The words filled a space in me I hadn't realized was hollow. For the first time, I thought maybe Preston's collapse isn't my story anymore. Maybe mine is about rebuilding. But I also knew Preston wasn't finished trying to drag me back into his storm. And that storm was about to crash into family dinner. Thanksgiving came like a dare. Noah invited me to his parents' house, the same suburban home where Preston had torn my life apart months before. I hesitated, my chest tight. Why would I walk back into the lion's den? Noah's voice was steady. Because you don't need to hide anymore. They need to see you've moved on, that he doesn't own your story. I wanted to argue, but a deeper part of me knew he was right. Closure wasn't always about slamming the door. Sometimes it was about walking back through it on your own terms. The day of, I dressed carefully. A dark green sweater, simple gold earrings, hair pinned back. Not flashy, not apologetic, just me, solid in my own skin. Noah wore one of his button-down sleeves rolled to his forearms, charcoal still faintly smudged on his knuckles. We drove in silence, the air thick with anticipation. When we walked in, conversation faltered. Preston's mother froze mid-greeting, her smile brittle. His father muttered a hello, eyes dropping to the floor. And there at the end of the dining room table sat Preston. He looked nothing like the man who once smirked and called me replaceable. His suit was wrinkled, his hair unkempt, dark circles bruised beneath his eyes. He forced a smile, but it cracked before it reached his face. The tension clung to the air as we sat down. Turkey and cranberry sauce filled plates, but no one touched their food with ease. Forks scraped nervously against china. Halfway through the meal, Preston snapped. He leaned forward, his voice low, but cutting through the chatter. "Connie, can we talk privately?" Every head turned. My chest tightened, but I forced calm. There's nothing left to say. He ignored it, desperation flooding his face. "Seeing you here, it hurts. I realize now what I lost. Those girls, the apps, the bars, it's all empty. You were the real thing. Please, let's try again. I'll do anything." The room went silent. His mother's lips pressed thin, his father shifted uncomfortably. I set down my fork, deliberately meeting his gaze. "Preston, I learned a lot from you, mostly how not to settle for someone who sees me as disposable." A ripple of whispers passed through the table. Preston's composure cracked. His eyes flicked to Noah sitting steady beside me. "So this is it, huh? You think Noah's better? He's just riding your coattails. I was the one with ambition, with drive. You're choosing scraps over me." Noah's jaw tightened, but he didn't speak. He didn't need to. His quiet presence was enough. I kept my voice calm. With Noah, it's mutual. Respect, growth. No one's a backup. That's something you never understood. Preston flushed, anger bubbling. "You'll regret this. I'm still the catch here." A bitter laugh slipped from me. "If being a catch means betraying the people who love you, then no, you're not." His mother's fork clattered against her plate, her eyes darting between us. His father cleared his throat, muttering something about football just to cut the tension. But the truth was already exposed, heavy in the air. I didn't yell. I didn't rise to his accusations. I simply stood, collected my coat, and placed a hand on Noah's shoulder. "We're leaving." Noah rose with me. Together we walked out, the murmurs behind us fading into the clink of silverware. Outside, the cold air bit at my cheeks. I exhaled, my breath fogging into the night. Noah glanced at me, his expression steady, protective. "You handled that perfectly," he said softly. I managed a smile, small but real. For once it wasn't about him, it was about me. And for the first time in 2 years, I felt the weight of Preston's hold lift like smoke, dispersing into nothing. But deep down, I knew one thing: Preston wasn't finished. Not yet. People like him never let go quietly. And the final storm was still coming. Time has a way of sorting truth from performance. By spring, Preston had become a shadow of the man he once bragged about being. The confident posts, the endless nights out, they'd dwindled to silence. Mutual friends whispered that he'd bounced between temporary jobs, burned too many bridges, and was back living under his parents' roof full-time. His mother still tried now and then, calling me once to insist I'd broken his spirit, but even she couldn't disguise the fatigue in her voice. The pedestal she'd built for him had crumbled. Everyone could see it now. Preston wasn't the victim. He was the architect of his own downfall. Meanwhile, my life, my real life, was finally beginning. Noah and I never rushed. What grew between us wasn't born of desperation, but of steady trust. He would bring sketches to my apartment, spreading them across my kitchen table, while I critiqued them with half-teasing seriousness. I'd show him my designs, and he'd point out details I didn't realize mattered. Somehow our worlds, his art, my design, wove together seamlessly, like threads meant to cross. One evening, sitting on the balcony with mugs of tea, Noah finally spoke what had been lingering between us. "You know, I used to watch the way you carried Preston. How you gave more than you ever got. I always thought, if someone like you ever looked at me that way, I'd never take it for granted." His words weren't dramatic. They weren't laced with manipulation. They were simple, raw, honest. And I realized then I wasn't afraid anymore. Preston tried, of course, one last time. It was almost exactly 2 years after the barbecue when a letter showed up in my mailbox. Handwritten, messy, desperate. Connie, I can't let go. You were my anchor. I know I ruined things, but I need you. Please, just one chance. I'm nothing without you. I folded it once, twice, then slipped it into the trash. No flare of anger, no pang of guilt. Just quiet certainty. He had finally become what he once accused me of being predictable. That summer, Noah and I visited an art gallery where his work was displayed. I watched strangers linger in front of his sketches, nodding thoughtfully, admiring the detail. He looked at me, then, eyes shining with gratitude. I realized I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living. On the balcony that night, overlooking city lights flickering against the river, Noah squeezed my hand. "Do you ever think about him?" he asked carefully. I shook my head. Not really. He thought tomorrow would always bring something better, but his tomorrow stretched into nothing. Mine. I glanced at him, heart steady. Mine became everything. He smiled, leaning his forehead against mine. For the first time in years, the ache in my chest was gone. Not replaced, not patched, healed. Looking back now, Preston isn't the villain of my story. He's just the lesson. And the lesson is this. Being someone's starter pack doesn't mean you're not worthy. It means they were never ready for the real thing. The real thing, the steady, trusting, mutual love, came later. Came when I least expected it. Came with Noah. So no, I don't regret walking away, not even for a second. I walked away, and in doing so, I finally walked toward myself.